Hi everyone, this is the second part of our lecture on imagism and form. So, the highlight of the second part is all about form, which is an element of poetry. Poetry is nearly always written in stanzas and lines, and this is called as the strict form in poetry. But other types of poetry are written in free form that they lack any rhymes or common patterns, which is obvious on the different literary pieces, particularly poems uploaded online. There are also classical formulaic poems such as the blank verse and the sonnet, and there are also the ancient epic poems transcribed from oral stories. The appearance of the poem is often a clue to its form, since the form is usually determined by the number of lines, length of the lines, and rhythm and or the rhyming scheme. So this description of the form of a poem, however, is only limited to what we call a strict form. Poetry may be classified according to form. The first one is called regular verse, which follows the principles of rhyme and rhythm. The second is the blank verse, which may have any number of lines, has no rhyme, usually iambic pentameter. And of course, free verse, which may have any number of lines, no rhyme, and no meter. In connection to our discussion about form, I would like to introduce to you the so-called poetic license. And through this very short presentation, I'd like for you all to have a sense of appreciation to practice poetic license, especially now that you are about to write your individual poems. Poetic license means that a poet is allowed to break rules in order to improve his or her poem in some way. For example, he or she may break spelling rule to make his or her rhyme or meter more perfect, such as using oft instead of often. The whole point of poetic license is dependent upon the poet's knowledge of the very rules that he or she is breaking, which now means that although you are allowed to break rules, the irregularities should be deliberately planned by the poet to establish a desired poetic effect. They should not be unintentional errors. A good example of a poem in which poetic license was practiced by the author is through Jose Garcia Villa's comma poems. Jose Garcia Villa is a poet, critic, and lecturer, and a Philippine national artist in literature and an awardee of the Academy Award for Literature. This unusual style that he used in his comma poems forces the reader to pause after every word, slowing the pace of the poem, resulting to a lineal pace of dignity and movement. And I'd also like to share that through the use of comma every afterword in his poem, it actually develops an added emotional appeal to the readers. So here's an example. Allow me to read it to you. In my undream of death, I unspoke the word, since nobody had dared with my own breath. I broke the cord. Looking at this example, we could tell that it actually talks about suicide. And the use of comma every afterword in every line of the poem gives the readers an intense emotion and let the readers feel the underlying emotion of the poem. Another example which uses poetic license can be seen in the title of the song, The One That Got Away. Grammatically speaking, we could say that the use of that here is ungrammatical. This needs to be who. However, the author of the song, which by the way is also a poem in nature, opted to use that instead of who, because again that is a part of the practice of poetic license. Another way of using poetic license is through the use of formalism and Russian formalism. And this will be presented to you in detail after